My name is Sarah Charlop. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Natural Areas Conservancy, which is a nonprofit organization based in New York City. I co-founded the Natural Areas Conservancy in 2012 with a man named Bram Gunther. And at the time, our interest was to create a nonprofit partner to the Parks Department to expand the city's capacity to manage more than 10,000 acres of forest and wetlands that are part of the New York City Parks Department land holdings and portfolio. Our work builds on and complements the work of the agency's natural resources team, but we bring individual donations and private investment and use our role as a partner to expand research and the collection of data to advance best practices in the way these critical areas are managed. My day-to-day role includes running the operations of our organization. We have about 15 full-time staff as well as a seasonal staff with an additional 15 student researchers. And my role includes everything: fundraising, working with our board of directors, working with our scientists, really keeping the organization running day to day, and also working closely with our team to select our future projects and to make sure that we are staying on the cutting edge, really bringing New York City's nature to the forefront as a resource for New Yorkers. My parents were both tenant organizers and dedicated their entire professional lives to both the public health and procurement of affordable housing for people across the city. And I've always been very inspired by their activism and their commitment to social justice. For me, I fell in love with the outdoors and with nature, and I lived and worked in upstate New York for about 15 years. So when I had the opportunity to return to New York City, I felt that it was a really special chance to bring together my love of nature with my love of people, and specifically the people of New York City. And one of the things that really has informed my work in this role is the findings of a study that was conducted by our colleagues at the Forest Service, which showed that 50% of New Yorkers are only experiencing nature within New York City parks. So there's this real disconnect between the idea of what it means to have access to nature and to build an environmental ethic with the need to really provide that experience here within city parks, and to have that experience be really diverse and abundant, and to really celebrate the local biodiversity that we have. Because for many of us, it's our whole experience. It's where we spend time with our families, it's where we spend time interacting with wildlife, and I feel really committed to making sure that these places are as healthy and as welcoming as they can be for the 8.5 million people who live in our city. So one of the things that is unique about the way that the Natural Areas Conservancy approaches its role as a partner to the City Parks Department is that we invest a lot of time and energy in conducting research and collecting data. So in 2013 and 2014, we conducted the largest assessment of natural areas in any city in the United States, which included in-depth detailed data collection about over 7,000 acres of forest and about 3,000 acres of wetlands. And last year, in 2018, we released a 25-year framework for the management of New York City's forests. And that framework takes into account the ecological condition and sensitivities of New York City's forests, looking back at the historic landscape and also layering in information about climate change and the way that our forest is changing, including increased heat and increased drought. We also looked at a range of social factors, including how people are perceiving and using these really critical resources, and that framework lays out both a set of benchmarks and metrics for how management should take place, but also includes a budget estimate, which has been very valuable for us in terms of advocating for increased investment in these places. We've been told by many of our colleagues, both in the nonprofit and in the public sector, that having that type of plan really allows people to rally together and to protect this resource in a different way. So we're excited about that opportunity. A couple of the unique ways that we've been implementing that program include a Conservancy engagement program where we actually provide peer-to-peer training to other nonprofits who are interested in contributing to the management of forests in New York, training their staff in the techniques that we're using, and increasing alignment between the way that the public and private sector are actually working in the field, so that we have more capacity but also more coordination in terms of this management. One of the things that was really important for us as we were putting together our plan for New York City was the realization that there wasn't a lot of information about how cities across the United States are approaching this topic. And so in 2018, we conducted a national survey looking at how cities across over 40 states are approaching the management of forests within urban areas. We've heard from 125 organizations, and this year we'll actually be convening teams from 12 of those cities. And we found that in some ways, folks are working on a lot of the same issues. People are tackling the challenges of invasive plants. They're thinking about how to balance human use and visitation with sensitive ecological areas. But we also found that there's some emerging new themes that are really, they're kind of stumpers. We're all together trying to figure out how to approach them. And those include the challenges of climate change and how we manage our forests to advance climate protection for our city. So two unique themes that came out of the survey findings that I'd like to mention. One is the role of climate change in our urban areas and how forests can be managed to help cities to adapt to climate, to help us cool our cities, to help provide refuge in really hot times from extreme heat, and also how we manage the forest to adapt to climate change itself. So how we make sure that our forests exist 100 or 200 years from now, and how the things that we're planting today and the investments we're making are setting us up for long-term success. The other theme, which is really important and that there's a lot of interest in, has to do with public health and the role that urban forests play in making human communities healthier, and how we can address the need to connect people with these spaces through the management activities that we do, making trails accessible, using signage that feels inviting, and helping people to really feel comfortable and safe exploring these places so that they can experience the beauty and the benefits that can be derived from spending time in nature within the city where you live. Nature of Cities is a blog and online community that brings together practitioners, academics, artists, community members from all over the world to write about and reflect on the importance of nature within cities across the globe. And it's a really unique platform because the conversations really allow people from different disciplines and different geographies to interact in a way that would not have been possible a decade or two ago. And that conversation really brings to light a lot of the opportunities for future collaboration, and I would say also gives us reasons to be hopeful. There's a lot of conversation within that forum, not just about what's not working, but also about innovative ways that people are feeling inspired and learning from each other. So we view it as a really valuable resource and community of like-minded people where we can share our thoughts and our experience here in New York City, and also learn from thought leaders from all over. Well, I can actually tell this as a story. So last weekend I went to my neighborhood park, which is not a wild forest. It's kind of your typical city park. It has a lawn and big trees, and my son went running across the lawn and he ran over it and threw his arms around the big tree in the middle of the lawn, and then he turned and he was like, "It's a big tree." And he's like, I'm gonna hug it. And I was just thinking about, on some deep level, we all have the capacity to be awed by nature. And that can be big, that can be a trip to the Grand Canyon, or it can be a trip to your city park. And I think creating experiences and opportunities for our kids to really fall in love with nature and to encourage and foster that sense of connection is so important. I think the work that we do to manage these places and all the scientific effort that we put into doing that work falls short if we don't also inspire people and speak to that primal desire to feel connected to each other and to the planet. So I find that is my inspiration. That keeps me going, and I enjoy my day job and the technical work I get to do, and I enjoy those special moments together where we get to just spend time outside and feel that sense of connection together. So yeah, for miles. So I'll actually end by sharing a little story from my childhood and talk about how it inspires my work today and my life as a parent. When I was a kid, we lived in a neighborhood that had been essentially burned out. It was a really run down neighborhood in the Bronx, and my mom was an organizer, and she used to load as many neighborhood kids into the back of our station wagon as she could fit and drive to the closest park, which was a drive away. There was no safe park within the neighborhood where we lived, and she used to say, you have to be able to see trees to know what season it is. You can't feel that connection to the rhythm of the year if you don't have access to nature and to sort of seeing the cycles of nature kind of changing around you. And that activism and that sense that maybe each individual person can't change everything, but you can touch individual lives, and hopefully you can make an investment that has a ripple effect and helps other people to achieve their goals of making things better for their families and for their communities. So I feel very inspired by that idea of working locally. I think the challenges that we're facing globally are so big, and they can feel so abstract, and thinking about challenges like climate change or population, booms, like they feel so, the scale feels so enormous compared to the reach of an individual person. But I do think we all have the ability to give back locally, and I think the sum of all those local actions adds up to something bigger than ourselves. So that is the modeling I hope to do as a parent, to have that sense of, for my son to feel sort of his potential as an individual and to feel connected to the bigger world around him. I mentioned New York City has about 10,000 acres of forested area, and I wanted to also mention that when we looked across the country at the work of this coalition of 125 organizations, that they're managing 1.7 million acres of forest within cities. So when I think about the work we're doing locally, our 10,000 acres includes over 5 million trees. And when you think about scaling that to almost 2 million acres and think about how many trees that is and how many people's lives that touches, I just think it gives you this totally different perspective about the importance of urban forests, the need to think about how we manage them differently than maybe we have in the past. And it's I think before we looked at those numbers, we had a hard time imagining the ways in which the work and innovation of individual cities and organizations could really have a national or even global impact. But thinking about just the sheer volume and land area that's bigger than the state of Delaware, bigger than the Grand Canyon, and it's located where the majority of Americans live. So that's a big deal, and that's a big potential impact, and it's one of the things that I'm really interested to explore more and to create more opportunities for cities to share with each other. So I feel like we have a lot we could be learning from one another.